USA Warrior Stories is a not-for-profit organization designed to record, archive, and share videos of veterans' stories, to help veterans make a connection with one another and to help us all better understand their sacrifices for our freedoms.
Born in Flushing, Queens, Whitestone, my grandparents lived there, had a greenhouse there. Moved in '52, moved to Jericho. My father was in the floral business, a job opportunity, whatever. Didn't pan out. 2 years in Jericho, '54, moved out here. He bought a greenhouse range of seasonal potted plants. So I had a job to go to in the backyard by the time I was 9 years old. Yeah, it was a business. Yeah, my dad was, he wasn't a combat vet. He was in the Coast Artillery down in Panama. He was in service before December 7th. And then he came back and he was an instructor at Fort Knox, Kentucky, on a live fire range. My father-in-law was also a vet, World War II, and he was over in, he hardly ever talked about it. In fact, I was going to high school, playing around. But then the draft board came knocking, and I always was interested in flying. My younger brother gets a recruitment brochure. Last page, warrant officer helicopter pilot. 18 years old, 20/20 vision, high school graduate. There were simple qualifications. And it was a 2-year enlistment option. In other words, if you didn't make it, it was only 2 years, just like the draft. So on that level, it was a win-win. And if I got to fly, well, I'd be willing to give me extra time. So I went in one step ahead of the draft, went down to Fort Polk, Louisiana, because that's where all the potential warrant officer pilots went, because it was the closest training base to Fort Walters, Texas. Went from basic, went to Walters, took a shot at being a warrant officer, a helicopter pilot. I loved the flying. But my flying just wasn't good enough. So I washed out of that, come in on Monday, get the group meeting, and okay, one way or another, you people are going someplace by Friday. Here's your choices. Went infantry and became a first cav grunt. Maybe they looked at my file and said, oh, this guy isn't afraid to fly, because I wound up with, you know, the group that was in the air the most. Right. So I'm home on leave, early February of '69. I'm going to the airport from Kennedy to California to Vietnam. And in truth, I just never worried about coming home in a box. So if I come back with a few dings and mostly together, I'll be all right. I'm like, this is just a bad freaking dream, and I've got to get through it, and on the other side, start all over again. And so that was my political take on it. It was getting off that plane in Vietnam. It was one day after the other, survival. So I was 21 when I went over there. My military go-through was very different from a lot of guys. I had 10 months in service before I got to AIT, and 8 of those were spent getting the military doctrination to be an officer, you know, systems and shit like that. And we had more than a few prior service and guys that have already had done a tour. So you're sitting around talking to them, you get the nitty-gritty. I got into conversations with guys that got through human wave attacks, lost buddies, you know, all that shit, which the average guy that goes basic training, AIT, home on leave, they get filled up with rah-rah, you're going to kill the Kong, life is beautiful, you know. And some guys really like the idea of killing the Kong. I just figured that's part of staying alive. I mean, I had more than one guy in prior service told me, make your battle buddies, but don't go thinking you're going to form some lifelong fucking friendship and come home and go have beers together. It probably ain't going to happen. So a lot of guys came home with a back off attitude. I guess I kind of went over there with a little bit of a don't get attached attitude. My first contact experience actually was been out in the field not that long. I was still a cherry boy. I even blew up my air mattress, had my mosquito net out. So, middle of the night, whoomp, whoomp, run for the foxholes, dive in and jump in the foxhole, and next, who's down here? One of the guys, he's on the bottom, laid out on the bottom, cornered up. I'm okay down here, no problem. And then I say, oh, what's going on? What do we do? It's real easy. He throws a clip in. He doesn't stick up. He just brings the gun up above the edge of the foxhole, starts from left, just bursts the clip out left to right, comes back down. See if anything comes back. I didn't really have a visual face-to-face contact until we had a little battle at the river, which was there were moments, and I one 24-hour period, humped off of the LZ, and we were going down the trail where you start getting the familiar crack of the AK-47s. You drop down, throw it open, spray around, and I can remember, and as I'm dropping the first clip and putting the other one in, thinking, running through my mind, a guy should get fucking killed doing this shit. Yeah, so I've heard. Anyway, and the guy did. Doc, he sort of solidified why he didn't want to get close to people. Real good guy. And we had just gotten into conversations, and just, you know, one minute you're walking down the trail, the next minute you're in a body bag. So, and we pulled back and set up for the night, and then they flew him out the next day, and on we went. My first Purple Heart got me 3.5 weeks in the rear. The second one was 24 hours. And then like I said, we went around, and then we had, then we knew we were going to get into some stuff. They flew us out, and they gave us 8 days worth of food, extra ammo, fresh grenades, and they just dropped us into this, I guess, somewhere a river along the Cambodian border. So the week goes on, set up one night, other companies on the other side, wake up in the morning to a god-awful racket. I mean, they touched the hornet's nest. So we humped off. You know you're walking into something. And it was a question of not if, but when. And I can remember we're going along, we stopped for a minute, and out of the corner of my eye, I see a Charlie, and I'm like, what the fuck? But we had these Kit Carson scouts with us, the North Vietnamese turns or whatever. And I can remember, it was a stupid moment, but as I'm going for the trigger, I'm trying to be nonchalant, and I just turned down, I said, no way those Kit Carsons made a fucking U-turn, right? He goes, oh no, and I just unloaded on this guy. And as soon as I pulled that trigger, the place exploded. All it took was one round, and everybody was on edge, and it just let loose. 5 minutes into it, my whole squad, every one of them had a ding one way or another, myself included. But Al couldn't get the 60 going, so I'm just blazing away while he's trying to clear it. Next thing I know, boom, and I look over, and he's got a friggin' hole in his arm this big. Okay. And so I give him my field dressing, wrap him up, because he's getting kind of, it was a big hole. And at that point, it was a pullback. And Al turned to me as he's going away, he goes, oh, by the way, you got hit. And I'm like, what? And I reached over here to look, and I literally stuck 2 fingers right into the hole. I don't know how it happened. The doctor that stitched me up called it a real John Wayne. Through and through, about an inch above my elbow. It would have just totally blown that thing apart if it had hit. But it got me medevac, and that was my third Purple Heart. Went back in the field, and we were doing another sweep, and we're getting to this area, and I remember going past my platoon sergeant, and now I'd already been out in the field for a while again. And I can just remember going past him, and I'm going, you know, Sarge, I said, I'm really got a bad feeling about this. When are you going to get me a better job? Not too much longer, we're going along and come across an opening. When all of a sudden it's crack, 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 sniper in the trees. And I'm like out in the open, and I'm quick decision, do I run for it with all this weight on my back? Do I take 2 steps and I get out, get out, get down? I slam myself to the ground, literally, and I'm hearing right over my head. And then one of our guys tagged him. and I was like, you know, you hear these, you know, you're going to hit the ground and trying to dig yourself a trench with the buttons on your jacket. Well, that's how low can you get? And so anyway, that's over. It was a solo act, Charlie's solo act. And I remember going up to him, that's it. I've had it. You got to get me the fuck out of here. So within a week, I got the job, got sent to this rear, it was a stand-down center. And then I got the malaria. So we fly in, get to Saigon Hospital. It was beautiful. It was all tiles and courtyard and the terrazzo roofs. It was just, you know, it was this is a hospital in Vietnam. Everything else was always tents and dirt, you know. So there for a week, and I hit, I don't know, 104 or something like that. They told me I was a degree away from the ice water bath. So then I went down to Cam Bay. Cam Bay was beautiful on the South China Sea, and the barracks were all right down by the water. You get out of the barracks, walk across the road, and you were at the beach. We moved up to Benoit, big base. By the time we got up there, I had a week to go, and I was checking out, you know, just killing time. And then wake up morning of December 27th in Benoit, 7 o'clock, get on the airplane, umpteen hours to start layover in Hawaii, California, process out, wake up on the morning of the 22nd, clock hours, probably 30 hours later, and then I'm home. I'm home as a civilian on December 22nd, looking at a Christmas tree. And then it's Christmas Eve. And I was just, to be honest, miserable. I didn't know what was going on. In hindsight, it was a real case of survivor's guilt amplified by sitting in a fucking Christmas tree. And then that was it. I came home and shut up, just like everyone else. In January of 74, we bought a house, and in February of 74, we got married. And here we are 49 years later. No small feat. The amount of vets I run across with 2 and 3 divorces under their belt. But yeah, the first couple of years, unless you ran across another vet, you were not going to identify. I mean, I never wore a vet's hat or a Vietnam vet hat or anything like that. Hardly anyone did. The only ones that did were the aggressive alpha warriors who were looking to have an argument or a discussion. So there wasn't a lot of support. I mean, nobody's cheering us when we came off the airplanes coming home, that's for sure. Over the course of time, I've had a couple of people, you know, don't you resent the way you were treated versus how they're taking care of them today. And I'm like, basically, there's no point in resenting history. It is what it is. I said, I can tell them, all I am glad for is that these guys don't have to put up with that shit. You can hate the war, you don't have to piss on the warrior.